Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into an incredible story, just one of the most astonishing medical survival accounts we've ever come across.
Yeah.
It's about Steve Holmes, who survived metastatic cholangiocarcinoma, or CCA, long term.
Right.
And what makes this deep dive maybe a bit different is we're focusing not just on, the medical side, but really on the mental architecture,
Hmm.
how he built this framework to survive long enough for the science to catch up.
Exactly. That's our mission for you today, really, to kind of distill those non-medical bits, the specific mindset, the sheer self-advocacy involved, and that mental organization he used.
To manage the chaos, right.
Yeah, the total information overload when you're facing what was, let's be honest, basically a death sentence back then.
We absolutely have to start there, setting the stakes.
Yeah.
What exactly is cholangiocarcinoma, CCA, and why is surviving it once it's metastatic?
Well, why was it considered statistically impossible?
Well, CCA, bile duct cancer, it's often put in the same category as pancreatic cancer. It's known for being incredibly aggressive.
And for stage 4, metastatic cases like Steve's, the survival rate historically was just shockingly low.
How low are we talking? Like, ballpark?
Historically. Maybe 2–3%.
Hmm.
That's it. When Steve got his diagnosis, the sources were very clear. Advanced stage 4 CCA, it was seen as unsurvivable.
Wow.
It's considered the end of the road, really.
Getting news like that, being told you have weeks left, it's not just physical, is it? It's pure mental chaos, overwhelming fear, conflicting information.
Total paralysis.
Yeah, but his first move wasn't about treatment plans initially. It was about controlling his own mind. He set up this mental filing system, called it Chapters of Me.
Yeah, he saw the need immediately. He had to cut through all that noise, the static of just sheer terror and uncertainty,
Right.
He figured if he was going to beat something impossible, he needed, in his words, a pristine thinking machine.
A pristine thinking machine. Sounds like clearing the decks completely.
Pretty much. And the rule wasn't for organizing medical binders or anything like that. It was purely psychological. He felt he had to just dump every fear, every worst-case scenario, all the conflicting advice into these mental chapters, compartmentalize them. Hard rules. And that gave him back a sense of psychological control, even when his body and the prognosis were completely out of control.
That kind of compartmentalization, that mental strength, it doesn't just show up when you get a diagnosis, does it?
No, definitely not.
The sources suggest his life before this, well, it had already been a kind of rhythm of crisis and recovery. Where did that deep resilience come from?
It seems like it was forged through repeated adversity. It really started with a sudden, devastating loss. Back in 1989, his father died suddenly, only 52.
Oh, wow.
And Steve carried this heavy guilt, this feeling of helplessness because he hadn't known CPR.
Yeah.
That vulnerability, that sense of if only, really stuck with him.
And then much later, the same cancer, CCA, actually took his younger brother Graham in 2014.
Exactly. So when he got his own diagnosis later, there was this terrible, fatal familiarity already baked in. But the physical challenges also played a huge role in training him, so to speak. There was Bell's palsy back in 2002.
Okay.
And then the really big one, 2012, a truly devastating cycling crash. Broke his neck, paralyzed down one side for 9 months.
9 months paralyzed.
Yeah. And the sources really point to that slow, incredibly difficult recovery as the thing that sort of unleashed his absolute determination to find a way back, no matter what it took.
So that experience taught him how to just keep going.
Fundamentally. And then there's this almost unbelievable incident that kind of perfectly defines his pattern of just getting back up again.
Right, the kangaroo story.
The kangaroo story. He finally recovers, gets back on his bike for his very first recovery ride. It's 5:30 in the morning. Okay. And boom.
Hits a kangaroo head on.
A literal head-on collision with a kangaroo. He walked away with just a black eye, amazingly. But it just highlights this pattern, no matter the blow, no matter how bizarre the setback.
He just gets back up.
He had this deeply ingrained history of getting back up and pushing forward. That resilience became his armor.
And he absolutely needed that armor for the medical nightmare that came next. So let's look at the actual diagnosis. November 2016. What were the first signs?
It was subtle initially. Just a big unexplained drop in his energy levels when cycling. Something was clearly off.
Yeah, okay.
Then the more classic alarming signs started. The jaundice, yellowing eyes, pale stools. And that led pretty quickly to the diagnosis. Extrahepatic distal CCA.
And for cancer right there, the main surgical option, if it's even possible, is the Whipple procedure. We should probably explain just how massive this surgery is.
Oh, the Whipple is legendary in surgery. It's one of the most complex abdominal operations there is. For Steve, if you add up all the related procedures, he spent a total of 25 hours under anesthesia.
25 hours in surgery.
Yeah. They basically rebuilt his upper digestive system, took out 80% of his stomach, 95% of the bile duct, a third of his pancreas, bits of the small intestine, the gallbladder.
Wow.
It's just an incredibly demanding surgery to endure and then recover from.
Yeah.
Utterly taxing.
And he barely gets through that, and then just a month later, he almost dies from a complication.
Yeah. January 8th, 2017. He's at home, recovering, and his main hepatic artery ruptures. An aneurysm developed. He just collapses, unconscious, vomiting huge amounts of blood. His wife, Claire, her quick thinking was just incredible. The sources say he was literally down to seconds.
Seconds from death. And then sheer luck plays a part in saving him.
Pure chance, really. There was an interventional radiologist, Dr. Tom Snow, who just happened to be working late that night, still at the hospital.
Unbelievable timing.
He was able to jump in immediately, find the bleed, stop it. The report says if Dr. Snow had left maybe 5 minutes earlier, well, this would be a very different story.
Incredible. Just incredible. But even surviving that, surviving the Whipple, surviving the rupture, it wasn't the end of the fight. July 2017 brings the absolute worst news.
Yeah, that was rock bottom. The cancer was back, and it was metastatic. Stage 4, spread to his liver, his lungs. Aggressive, the scans showed tumors too numerous to count. And the prognosis was revised again, down to weeks, maybe even days. This was the point where that pristine thinking machine needed one last desperate option.
So how did he get from weeks to live to this lifeline, the phase 2 clinical trial? What was the path?
It came down entirely to some really proactive genetic testing that his oncologist, Dr. Matthew Burge, pushed for. They tested the actual tumor tissue for specific genetic markers.
Looking for a key.
Exactly. To see if he might qualify for this trial, Keynote 158. It was using an immunotherapy drug, Keytruda. The generic name is pembrolizumab.
Okay, so what was the specific biological quirk, the loophole in his tumor that actually opened that door for him?
Well, they found his tumor was PD-L1 positive, which is relevant.
Yeah.
The absolute game changer, the critical factor, was that it was MSI high.
MSI high, microsatellite instability high. We hear that term a lot more in cancer research now. For listeners, can you break down what MSI high actually means in simple terms?
Sure. It's usually found with a pretty straightforward test, an IHC test. And basically, MSI high means the tumor's DNA repair system is broken. It's got what's called mismatch repair deficiency, or DMMR.
Okay.
Think of that repair system like the spell checker for your DNA as it copies itself. When the spell checker is broken,
Errors pile up, lots of them.
thousands and thousands of errors, exactly. And this creates what's called a very high tumor mutational burden, TMB high. Now, paradoxically, all these errors make the tumor cells look really, really weird and foreign to the immune system.
So it's like the tumor is waving a giant flag saying, I'm not normal, attack me.
That's a great way to put it. It's shouting, attack! But the cancer was also using this other protein, PD-L1, to basically hit the brakes on the immune system's T cells, sort of hiding in plain sight.
Ah, okay. So the tumor is shouting, but it also has the brakes on. And Keytruda.
Keytruda takes the foot off the brake. It blocks that PD-L1 signal. So suddenly, the T cells can see this highly mutated, very foreign-looking target, the MSI high tumor, and they can attack it effectively.
A perfect storm, biologically
It
speaking.
required that specific combination, yeah. And he was just incredibly fortunate to have it. But we should also mention just how weak he was at that point. When they were signing the consent forms for the trial, he couldn't even lift his own arm.
Wow.
His wife, Claire, had to lift his arm, and Dr. Burge actually had to put the pen in his hand for him to sign. That's how close he was.
That really paints a picture of the desperation and the commitment and the response once he got that first infusion.
Astonishingly fast. I mean, just 3 days after the very first dose, that intense rib and back pain he'd been suffering with just vanished. Gone. He could sit up straight, breathe properly again.
3 days.
3 days. And the first scan results, they were described as historic. And no evidence of disease. Dr. Burge apparently just told him they're all gone.
Just gone.
Gone. He became only the second patient in the world known at that time to have such a complete response for metastatic CCA using this specific immunotherapy approach. Just a true medical miracle.
Built on that foundation of mental resilience he'd cultivated.
Absolutely. Which brings us right back to those mental strategies, the ones that kept him in the fight long enough for science to deliver that miracle. He talks about 3 core pillars for his survival.
What were they? Let's break them down.
Okay, first was acceptance. But critically, not acceptance of the prognosis, but acceptance of the new reality he was in. That allowed him to reset Focus on the fight itself.
Right. Accept the situation, not the predicted outcome.
Exactly. Second was willingness. Just this fierce, unwavering commitment to keep looking for the next option, however unlikely it seemed. Never stop looking.
And the third?
The third was creating a parallel reality. He actively, consciously constructed an internal narrative where survival wasn't just a hope, it was the plan. That was the only acceptable narrative inside his head.
That idea of a parallel reality, it must be incredibly fragile, especially when you're dealing with well-meaning people trying to make you, face reality. He uses a striking term for that Trojan horse thought gifts.
That's such a powerful phrase, isn't it? He means those comments that sound supportive or realistic on the surface, but actually undermine the patient's psychological defenses.
Things like,
You need to accept what's coming. Or maybe sharing stories like, oh, my cousin had that and it didn't end well for him. They seem like shared experience, but they're gifts of negativity. They invade that fragile parallel reality and can just destroy the resilience you desperately need.
because hope for him wasn't just being optimistic. It was something much more active.
Much more. His definition is great. Hope isn't just optimism. Hope is the plan projected from that need. The hope is the plan. The plan is survival. Anything that threatens that plan has to be deflected.
So let's really focus on the actionable takeaway here, the self-advocacy piece. If someone listening is facing a difficult diagnosis, what's the single most critical lesson from Steve's survival?
He's very clear on this. Push for the simple IHC test to determine your MSI status and your PD-L1 status right at the very beginning.
Before anything else.
Before committing to huge, life-altering surgeries like the Whipple or potentially debilitating rounds of traditional chemotherapy, get that genetic information first.
Because it could open up a completely different path, potentially avoiding the really brutal traditional treatments and heading straight for something targeted like immunotherapy, all based on one relatively inexpensive test.
Precisely. This information could literally change everything about your treatment journey, and yet, astonishingly, it's still not always standard practice everywhere to test for MSI status right away for certain cancers.
So patients or their advocates need to specifically ask for it, demand it even.
Demand it upfront. That's his key message for self-advocacy.
Okay, let's loop back to the physical side for a moment. He survived, he gets this miracle cure, and he gets back on his bike. Logs thousands and thousands of kilometers. Why was cycling so important for his sustained survival?
He called it his moving workshop. That's where he processed everything, where he sorted through his thoughts, maintained his mental clarity, filtered out the noise. It was also about grounding his commitment, honoring that promise he made to Dr. Burge. Get out of here and go live your life. Cycling was him living his life.
And he also makes a really interesting point about motivation, distinguishing perseverance from passion.
Yes, that's a key insight he shares. He says people often mistake his perseverance for passion. But passion feels like a choice, doesn't it? It feels like a luxury sometimes.
Right.
For him, perseverance wasn't a choice. It was born from absolute necessity. It had to endure because the alternative, giving up, was simply unacceptable. That's a crucial difference in mindset.
And that same perseverance now drives his work. He co-founded the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation Australia.
That's right. Focusing on patient-led systems research now.
And his current thinking is fascinating. He views bile health itself as a sort of canary in the cancer coal mine.
Yeah, he argues that fundamental bile health and our metabolic processes are just crucial for overall health, for prevention, for cellular resilience. These core functions that maybe we overlook when we're always chasing the complex, high-tech medical breakthroughs.
Which leads perfectly into our final thought, that provocative idea for you, the listener, to take away. Steve's journey really suggests that the cure, or maybe the path to managing complex problems, is often hidden in the fundamentals, in those overlooked basic systems.
So, the question to maybe mull over is this. In your own work or your own life challenges, maybe even a business problem you're facing, are you potentially searching high and low for the complex, cutting-edge fix? When maybe, just maybe, the real leverage, the real answer lies in understanding and strengthening the basic core functions of the system itself. Are you overlooking the fundamentals while chasing complexity? Something to think about.
A really powerful question. And we'll end with the final powerful lesson from the man who absolutely redefined what's possible against truly impossible odds.
He says, I have learned this. Regular people, with common sense, can cut through cancer's complexity with clarity. If we give them the right tools and the right pathway, they redefine what's possible.